Hi, my name is Delene Sheesby, and I'm an occupational health and safety practitioner. In May 2021, the Department of Employment and Labour released the Amendment Bill, the Amendment to the Occupational Health and Safety Act Bill. So now we have until the 31st of July for the public to actually make a comment on all of the changes or the proposed changes to the bill. Now, unfortunately, I won't be able to see some of my clients. I won't be able to come to you and give you face-to-face training regarding the changes. So what I thought I would do is put together a couple of these short webinars in which I will deal with some of the changes so that you can go and maybe share it with your colleagues and discuss it in your own workplaces or in your own time. Okay, I'm going to share my screen now. Go. Good. I've chosen two topics. The first topic is the definition as far as is reasonably practicable. And then the other topic is changes within section 16. So we will have a look at those as well. So the Department of Employment and Labour published this bill, the OHSA 2020 Amendment Bill, for public comment. The whole idea, and it's been in the making for many, many years, the whole idea is obviously to improve the protection of workers in the workplace. There are major changes. One of the changes is now the introduction of administrative fines in the case of non-compliance. Section 7, you will recall Section 7 was the requirement where you may be required to have a health and safety policy. Well, that has now been substituted with the requirement of a full health and safety management system. Section 8, the duties of the employer to the employee. Big changes here. This Section 8 now requires mandatory risk assessments to be conducted by the employer and the workplace. Major changes are now greatly going to impact the future of your businesses. There are many more insertions, many deletions, and substitutions to the existing Occupational Health and Safety Act 85 of 1993. And yes, we have until the 31st of July 2021. The first topic that I would like to discuss with you is this definition as far as is reasonably practicable. Now, this definition originates from the term the reasonable man test, which is a legal term. So in the Occupational Health and Safety Act, it has the 4 different criteria. First criteria, the severity and the scope of the hazard or risk concerned, whereas you must now go and identify all of your hazards and your risks as far as reasonably practicable, evaluate them, control them. Then the state of knowledge reasonably available concerning that hazard or that risk, and of any means of removing or mitigating that hazard or risk. C says the availability and suitability of means to remove or mitigate that hazard or risk. And D, as far as reasonably practicable, the cost of removing or mitigating that hazard or risk in relation to the benefits derived therefrom. So, if you think health and safety is expensive, try having an incident. So the Amendment Bill now proposes to omit this definition completely. Now, having a look at that definition, it came up in a recent webinar which was presented or given by SIOSH. During a recent webinar in which the Chief Inspector from the Department of Employment and Labour was unpacking the Occupational Health and Safety Amendment Bill, Garth Hunter, who is an industrial hygiene specialist, asked the Chief Inspector the following regarding reasonably practicable. He said, using Section 16 as an example and the removal of the give consideration to the resources available to the 16.1. The question is, how does this weigh against the reasonable man approach, which is fundamental in law? Mr. Zana, our Chief Inspector's response was as follows. He said, taking training, for example, should training be open for discussion when it comes to people? And now you come as an employer and say, I didn't have enough money, and what we taught them is what we do, or whatever the case is in terms of those four criteria. Regardless of the fact that the definition is not there and the employers put it to court, the court would obviously open itself up to what the employer is saying with regards to responsibility. But in so doing, the employer might open him or herself up to the types of things they would like not to come out in an environment. Chief Inspector said, well, for me, the excuse is taken away and the employer is forced to think thoroughly through everything, and if there's really no way they can comply, they can come back to the Department of Employment Labour and engage on the matter. It's a case of how well have you done what you had to do, and how well have you put in place everything you had to. The law applies even outside the occupational health and safety sphere, and there are aspects of the law that will kick in. Thank you, Mr. Zana. Good response. So the second item that I would like to talk about is this amendment of Section 16. Let me unpack it for you. There we go. Okay. So in the past or existing, we have our Chief Executive Officer, who is our 16.1. So a Chief Executive Officer shall ensure that his duties of his or her employer are contemplated in this Act are probably discharged. So the Chief Executive Officer shall develop, implement, and continuously review the health and safety management system as the employer may be directed in terms of Section 7.1. That is your health and safety management system. So then in the past, our 16.1 would then delegate certain health and safety duties to our 16.2. And from there onwards, the 16.2 would often then delegate other duties further on down the line. So now in the amendment coming to Section 16.2, it says, without derogating from his or her responsibility or liability in terms of subsection 1 and 1A, the Chief Executive Officer may in writing delegate any duty contemplated in the said subsection to any person under his or her control, which person shall act subject to the control and direction of the Chief Executive Officer in the interest of occupational health and safety. So that would be that written appointment. Then it goes on to say, Section 2A, 16.2a, a person so delegated, here, section so delegated in terms of subsection 2 may not further delegate the duty to any other person. The provisions of subsection 1 shall not relieve an employer of any responsibility, accountability, or liability under this Act. So as it means the lower rank delegatee has direct reporting on health and safety to the CEO, and his manager cannot run interference. Most interesting, think about that. During a recent SIOSH webinar, the Department of Labour Chief Inspector Mr. Zana unpacked the entire Occupational Health and Safe Amendment Bill. If you wish to view the webinar, you can access it on the link below. That's all I have. Those are the two, and I will be in touch with you soon, and we will discuss some other changes. Good. But in the meantime, keep safe.